Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a really lively and interesting new recording, very enjoyable, of Martinu's two piano concertos, coupled with a little Stravinsky bonbon in the middle, featuring Czech violinist Josef Špaček and the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra under Petr Popelka. Really, really good, with Miroslav Sekera at the piano. Now, if you like Martinu's music for violin and orchestra, and you should because there's tons of it and it's marvelous, you may have the 4-disc set on Hyperion featuring Bohuslav Matušek. And there's all kinds of stuff. There are only 2 formal violin concertos. Everything else is a concerto grosso violin plus other instruments thing. 2 violins, violin and piano. There's also a suite concertante for violin, 2 versions of that. There's just tons of stuff. Martinu was himself a violinist, so he certainly understood the instrument. But these 2 concertos had very different histories. They're very, very interesting. The first concerto was composed in 1933, and it wasn't premiered until 1971 with Josef Špaček violin and George Schulte in Chicago, of all places. The reason is because it was originally written for Samuel Dushkin, and Martinu had some issues writing it. And then, of course, 1933, the date, things intervened. And by the time it was finished, Dushkin wasn't happy with the form of it, and he kept asking Martinu for corrections and changes. And eventually, Martinu lost the score, or they felt that the score was lost. It was actually owned by the contrabassoonist of the Boston Symphony, who was a friend of Martinu's, and it wasn't discovered until like the 1960s, and it was a whole thing. So now it's back. In style, it's similar to Martinu's Paris works of the 1930s. That is, concerto grosso neo-baroque, sort of ostinato rhythms that churn along and moments of lyricism in the slow movement, but, little motives and lots of quirky, syncopations, and it's all lots of fun. It's a short work. It's only 22 minutes and 44 seconds. Now, the second violin concerto comes from 10 years later, 1943, when Martinu's first symphony was premiered by Koussevitzky in the Boston Symphony. It was written for Misha Elman, who was so impressed by the first symphony that he asked Martinu for a violin concerto. And Martinu didn't respond, and then showed up with a violin concerto, which Misha Elman liked very much and played for several years. He had exclusive rights for the first 3 years. And so he played it pretty frequently, and then it disappeared, of course, aside from performances by Josef Špaček and various Czech people. Now, this is a work that's quite similar in style to the symphonies of the 1940s. It's more romantic, more lyrical, with broadly sung melodies. It's a bigger work. It's about 26, 27 minutes. Really, really lovely. And in between them, we have Stravinsky's Divertimento for violin and piano. That is, excerpts from his Divertimento, the Fairy's Kiss Divertimento, based on Tchaikovsky, which has now been reduced for violin and piano. And this was also inspired by Samuel Dushkin, who worked on it with Stravinsky. So there's, it's a nice program. It's smartly put together. Now, Josef Špaček is a wonderful violinist. He has the rhythm. He's got the timbre. He's got the virtuosity. He knows how to make his instrument sing, particularly in the lovely slow movement of the second concerto. It's wonderfully, wonderfully satisfying playing. Petr Popelka and the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra. There we go. They are to the manner born. Not too many other people are doing these things, although the second concerto has gotten some play, finally, in recent decades. Isabel Faust, I think, recorded it, and a few other people as well. And it should be a repertory work. It's absolutely marvelous. But they're both oodles of fun. And if you collect Martinu and you enjoy Martinu, and of course, who doesn't? I know there are some people who have no soul and they can't handle Martinu. But these are 2 splendid 20th century violin concertos. And, there just aren't that many great violin concertos out there in the universe. that we can afford to turn our backs on a couple of really good ones when they pop up. So I would recommend this quite vociferously. Give it a shot. You'll really, really enjoy it. And the Stravinsky filler is just marvelous, with excellent piano playing, by the way, by Miroslav Sekera. If I pronounce those people right, I hope. I tried. But you can get the disc, play the music, and you don't have to worry about what their names are. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.